Here's the problem. Toyota Land Cruisers from the 80s and 90s are suddenly selling for $60,000 to $80,000, and lenders are offering 20-year loans to make these purchases seem affordable. The monthly payment might look reasonable, but the total cost is staggering. In the next 10 minutes, I'll solve this puzzle by showing you exactly why these prices make no financial sense, how the interest on these extended loans will actually double the cost of the vehicle, and what smart alternatives exist for SUV buyers who don't want to be underwater on a loan until 2043. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Have you noticed how Toyota Land Cruisers from the 80s and 90s are suddenly selling for more than many new luxury vehicles? Let's take a closer look at this market madness. We're seeing older SUVs that should be depreciating assets actually gaining value at an astonishing rate. I recently came across a 1995 Land Cruiser with an odometer reading of 322,000 miles. That's enough to circle the earth nearly 13 times. Listed for an eye-popping $63,000. This particular model featured the original tan leather interior, showing significant wear on the driver's seat, minor rust around the wheel wells, and the original 4.5-liter straight-six engine. Despite these imperfections and astronomical mileage, the seller described it as investment grade and future-proof, claiming the FZJ80 series has become the gold standard for collectors seeking the perfect blend of modern reliability and classic styling. Even more shocking was an 88 model with 177,000 miles commanding $78,000. This particular FJ62 featured the original beige paint with minimal rust, upgraded old man emu suspension, and period correct modifications that preserved its vintage appeal. The seller justified this price by highlighting its survivor status with original engine and transmission, plus a documented maintenance history dating back to the original purchase. According to the listing, it represented the final evolution of the classic square body Land Cruiser design before Toyota modernized the platform. When these vehicles were new, they sold for a fraction of these prices. A 1995 Land Cruiser had an MSRP around $40,000, equivalent to about $78,000 in today's dollars. That means the 322,000 mile example is selling for roughly 80% of what it cost new, adjusted for inflation. The 88 model originally retailed for approximately $25,000, or about $62,000 in today's money. Incredibly, it's now priced 25% higher than its inflation-adjusted original price, despite being 35 years old. What's driving this market frenzy? First, there's the supply factor. Toyota produced relatively few Land Cruisers for the US market compared to other models. The FJ62 saw just over 40,000 units sold stateside during its entire production run. Second, many of these vehicles were actually used as intended, off-road, and in harsh conditions, meaning fewer well-preserved examples exist today. Social media and collector communities have dramatically amplified this trend. Instagram accounts dedicated to overlanding and 80 series appreciation showcase these vehicles tackling impossible terrain while looking impossibly cool. Every time a celebrity posts their restored Land Cruiser, values seem to jump another $5,000 across the market. There's also a powerful nostalgia element at play. These older Land Cruisers represent an era before computerized everything, when vehicles were simpler, more mechanical, and theoretically easier to maintain. They embody a rugged capability that many feel has been engineered out of modern vehicles in favor of comfort and fuel efficiency. Speaking of modern vehicles, let's put these prices in perspective. For $63,000 to $78,000, you could purchase a brand new 2023 Toyota Sequoia with a hybrid powertrain delivering triple the fuel economy of these vintage gas guzzlers. You'd get modern safety features like adaptive cruise control and collision prevention, a factory warranty, and reliability that doesn't require keeping a mechanic on speed dial. A new 4Runner starts around $40,000, leaving you enough money for several years of fuel and maintenance. So who's actually buying these vintage Land Cruisers at these prices? It's certainly not your average Toyota enthusiast. The market seems divided between wealthy collectors who can afford these vehicles as weekend toys and passionate enthusiasts stretching their finances to the breaking point to own their dream vehicle. And that's where things get truly concerning. Behind these inflated prices lurks an even more troubling trend that makes these seemingly unaffordable vehicles appear within reach: 20-year car loans. Yes, you read that correctly. Financial institutions are now offering 240-month financing terms specifically targeted at buyers of these vintage Toyota SUVs. These extended loans create the illusion of affordability by spreading payments over 2 decades, bringing monthly payments down to levels comparable to more reasonably priced vehicles. A $78,000 Land Cruiser financed over 20 years might result in a monthly payment that doesn't immediately trigger financial alarm bells for many buyers. But this approach masks the true cost of ownership and creates a financial time bomb. The financial time bomb of 20-year car loans isn't just ticking, it's a mathematical disaster waiting to explode in slow motion. What appears to be a manageable $1,352 monthly payment for that coveted Land Cruiser actually translates to a staggering $320,000 over the loan's lifetime. More than double the purchase price for a vehicle that will likely be worth practically nothing by the time you've made that final payment. Let's get specific about what's happening here. Companies like Riz Lending are actively marketing 240-month financing plans specifically for these vintage Toyota SUVs. Yes, you heard that right. 20 years of payments for vehicles that are already decades old. This financing strategy creates an illusion of affordability that masks a financial nightmare. When we break down the numbers, they become truly frightening. According to recent data, the average used car loan interest rate is hovering around 14% APR as of November 2023. At that rate, financing a $150,000 vehicle over 20 years creates a payment structure where you'll end up paying $320,000 total, with nearly $170,000 going straight to interest. That's money you'll never see again, spent on a depreciating asset. Now, I want you to think about the stark difference between this type of loan and a traditional 30-year mortgage. When you finance a $300,000 house over 3 decades, you might end up paying around $660,000 total, including interest. But here's the crucial distinction: that house will likely increase in value over time. By contrast, even the most desirable vintage SUV will eventually reach a point where its value plateaus or declines, especially once you've added another 20 years and countless miles to its odometer. Consider this timeline. If you purchase a 1990s Land Cruiser today on a 20-year loan, you won't make your final payment until 2043 or beyond. At that point, your vintage SUV will be over half a century old. Even with meticulous maintenance, a vehicle with potentially 400,000 plus miles will face significant mechanical challenges. You could easily find yourself making payments on a vehicle that's sitting in your garage because it's no longer reliable enough for daily use. The psychological trap at work here is insidious. When shopping for vehicles, most buyers fixate almost exclusively on the monthly payment rather than the total cost. Salespeople and lenders know this and exploit it masterfully. They'll happily extend your loan term to bring down that monthly number, knowing full well that you'll end up paying far more in the long run. It's a classic case of payment shopping rather than actually determining what you can afford. What makes this particularly dangerous is the rate at which you'll be underwater on the loan. Let's imagine you decide to sell that Land Cruiser after 10 years. Halfway through your loan term. At that point, you'll have paid approximately $160,000 toward the vehicle, but due to how amortization works, you might still owe $120,000 on a vehicle that could be worth just $50,000 to $60,000 in the market. That's negative equity of around $60,000 to $70,000, money you'll need to pay out of pocket just to get out of the loan. The practice of offering these extended term loans has been condemned by financial experts as financial lunacy. Unlike homes, which often serve as wealth-building investments, vehicles are typically depreciating assets. Even collector cars that may appreciate for a period will eventually hit value ceilings, particularly as they age beyond practical usability. You might be wondering if these vintage Land Cruisers could be the exception to the rule. Perhaps they'll continue appreciating enough to justify such long-term financing. The answer is a resounding no. While certain models may hold value better than others, the idea that a vehicle will maintain or increase its value enough to offset the massive interest costs of a 20-year loan is fantasy, not financial reality. Even in a best-case scenario where the vehicle maintains its current inflated market price, which is highly unlikely over a 20-year period, you'll still have paid more than double that value in payments. And that doesn't account for the thousands you'll spend on maintenance, repairs, and restoration over those 2 decades to keep a vintage vehicle operational. So here's the bottom line. When we combine these inflated vintage Toyota prices with these 20-year financing financing schemes. We're looking at a financial disaster waiting to happen. Financial experts are clear. If you need more than 60 months to pay for a vehicle, you simply cannot afford it, period. Think about it. A house mortgage makes sense over decades because property typically appreciates. A car, however, it's a depreciating asset that will likely become a financial burden long before you make that final payment. What about you? Have you encountered these extended loan offers? Drop a comment below about your car financing experiences. I'd love to hear your thoughts.